Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 56 of Truth or Trend, where Dr. Verzal and I take the questions that people are asking all the time and examine them and thoroughly go through and determine, is this something that is worth it, or is it something that is just hype and lots of marketing? And today we have had many questions about mushroom coffee, Ryze coffee. So much about this that we're gonna tear it apart a little bit, talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we thought, you know what, this would be even more fun to take it another level because we got one guy who drinks coffee while recording this podcast, and we got another guy who won't touch it. What are you drinking there, Dr. V?
Water.
Water. So we want to have a long talk today about the good, the bad, and the ugly of coffee in general, mushroom coffee specifically. So Dr. V and I've got so much to say about this. Dr. V, what's your first thing you want to tell everybody out there who's listening, who's drinking coffee while listening to us?
Buckle your seatbelt, don't hate us.
Right.
Or me. They'll like you, they'll hate me.
Hey, this is all with love, right? This is all with love.
We're trying to help and inspire and educate.
Exactly. And there is a Goldilocks zone in there. There is good and bad. And that is with the thing with many things. And I think one of the things that you and I find is that people fixate on one aspect of something or they overgeneralize something. And so they can dismiss a whole thing. My first reminder is thinking of the China study, right? The China study said that meat is killing everybody. Don't eat meat or you're going to die. And influenced a lot of people. But to say just meat, right? You're not thinking about all the other variables that go into it, whether or not people can digest meat, how much they're cooking the meat, whether, there's so many variables. And I think with coffee, we've got a lot of variables to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the discussion topics for today parallels the meat, as you bring it up, is the AGEs, right? The advanced glycation end products that the roasting potentially of the coffee does, and overcooking of the meats is these AGEs. Nice acronym because it does age people, right?
Right. Yeah.
It accelerates the lines, if you will, age lines and some of that sort of stuff that could potentially go along with dehydration. Already letting the cat out of the bag. Here comes
There's a lot of cats in the bag today, Dr. B. So.
Right. So I guess I could start quickly with the story part of my journey on this. I look at the blood type diet, and there's definite value in the way the immune system and, insulin and so on respond to those foods. So in general, the O blood type people, that's where the haters are gonna come. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because of the way their methylation pathways work, and they're very dependent on methionine heavy products like beef. Eggs and tuna, those are your three highest sources of methionine to drive this methylation pathway, which is going to come up a lot today. Coffee, unfortunately, and decaf, but especially caffeinated coffee for the O blood type, and even more so the O blood type female, tends to be very detrimental, to the extent that this patient years ago came in and she'd already had her left ovary removed because of the ovarian cancer that she had, she had her right ovary removed, and then she came in with left ankle swelling and signs and symptoms that the left ovary was now giving her trouble. And this was the first time I really dug in and was able to figure out that stuff that you just put in your mouth was adversely affecting her methylation pathway, compromising her ability to break down estrogen properly. And that was setting the stage for this ovarian cancer. I said, hey, this is what's causing it. You got to chill on the coffee. She chilled on the coffee. This gal's very bipolar-like, and she came back 6 months later, back on her coffee, same symptoms, same ovarian cancer. Ultimately ended up having to have that one removed too. Sorry, but because of her poor discipline.
Yeah.
So and that's the more the extreme. I figured I'd get that out in the front end. And I've seen that with a lot of other O blood type females that is a big trigger. So that's definitely something that we want to keep in under advisement, if you will, consideration as we go through that. Certainly, the other side of that, the Dustin side of the story is the A blood type people. A blood types tend to do well on coffee, and Diadamo, the author of that, says that it actually helps and facilitates digestion for that person. So just to kind of set the stage, there's some of the polarity that we have right out of the gate.
And I'm also a hypermethylator, right? So I have a lot of people in my family who overmethylate. So it is actually somewhat beneficial to have something to help inhibit that methylation. So I'm not overdoing it. And the hypermethylation we talked about in mental health can be very, very concerning. If you're too much methylating, you're slowing down the genetic transport of the neurotransmitter. So you could get too high of neurotransmitters. So unbelievably, you think of it as a stimulant, but it actually can help reduce excess neurotransmitters in the synapse for someone like myself. And like you said, a different blood type too. I think, those are all interesting points that we need to.
The Goldilocks paradox, right? I mean, remember we've talked about it several times on several of the other podcasts that hypomethylation, undermethylating, methylation activates the tumor suppressor gene. So we certainly want that functioning, right? But then if we go over hypermethylate, like you just talked about, then we're nuts. So which do you want? You want cancer?
I'm on the edge all the time. So hypomethylators, people who do know that they are undermethylating, right? Or they're not getting enough methylation, then coffee is something to be cautious with, is what we're saying right out of the gate here.
Out of the gate.
We jumped right over the mushroom thing and straight into this, but we're going to dance back and forth with a bit. But the other thing I want to remind everybody is you're going to be more susceptible to hypomethylation, low methylation, if you don't have enough magnesium, if you don't have enough zinc, if you don't have B6. And like you just said, it can actually be too much of a diuretic. What's that?
Folate. Don't forget folate.
And folate. Yes, for sure. And so that coffee diuretic for a low methylator could be an issue, right? And we've talked about MTHFR and the genetic variants and all of that previously. But again,
cortisol is another methylation inhibitor.
Right.
Stress. So these are huge things in our current environment. So
yes,
it's a meaty subject. We took the bull on this one.
Well, let's answer the Ryze coffee question, right? For the people who are asking about it. And so I wound up writing a whole blog about it this weekend in preparation for this, just because I want people to go deeper into that, because I know that you and I would talk more about caffeine. And one of the statements that I think that I want to repeat up from that blog was that there's a lot of theoretical extrapolation happening with this. They're saying, oh, it has these things in them, so you're going to get all the benefit that has been clinically shown with those products. Where there's not a product-specific clinical outcome with Ryze. So they're basically saying, oh, well, we have these magic ingredients. And because in other areas of use of these medicinally, that means that you're going to get that medicinal benefit from taking this. And that's not entirely true. And that's what I want to point out. Now, I'm a huge fan of doing things in small amounts. I think that there is value in a micro dose of certain things. Eat nutrients of all kinds, you can do small. But I think that they're way overblowing the claims that they're making about this Ryze. And so that's where I want to get people started right away. Is just because the mushrooms are in there doesn't mean that you're getting all the benefits that they say that you get from those mushrooms. Full stop. So if it's an expensive thing that you're trying to do, and you have to look at the quality. We always talk about this, the quality of mushrooms, right? And there's so much that they don't know about. They have to be from the fruiting bodies, right? They have to be properly extracted for you to be able to get the value from them. And so for it to be meaningful, you have to have a significant amount of them. And Ryze specifically does say it's got a proprietary blend. So you don't even know how much of cordyceps is in there, or how much of, the different mushrooms that they say are in there. See, cordyceps, shiitake, turkey tail, lion's mane, king trumpet, and reishi. And all of those have their incredible value. And I encourage everybody to look into those more. But you have to have a specific amount, a valuable amount. And as you and I, we always talk about Great Minds mushrooms because it's a lion's mane product specifically. Right. The value is there, right? It's organic. It's the fruiting body. It's the dual extraction process. and it's stacked with whole food nutrients, blackstrap molasses. So there's a difference in being doing it that way than just dumping some portions of it in your coffee every day and expecting the same results. That happens a lot
Yes.
because somebody will say, "Oh yeah, I heard about lion's mane. It's really, really great." So I went and got this mushroom coffee and I'm taking it, and they don't get the benefit from it. So they dismiss lion's mane, saying lion's mane doesn't work. Well,
Right.
that's not right. It wasn't the right form of
Right.
it, for sure.
Right. Right. Right.
I think that's one of the things that we want to point out. Go
Excuse me,
for
and
it.
point counterpoint.
Yeah,
uh, Vested interest. You sell mushrooms.
truth, truth. Now,
But
but here's the thing. The reason I created it is because I saw the value in it.
yeah,
And one of the great things that you and I were able to do is have it field tested with different clinicians around the country who gave us
right,
feedback
right.
unsolicited, who reached back out and say, "Hey, can we get more of that?" Because they were seeing it. That was so confirming because I didn't want to influence the outcome of that with people as well.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. So, which was great, and kind of on the other side of that, as a muscle tester, I do find Ryze to actually test decent for people. Yeah, yes, it's probably not, clinical therapeutic doses, but those adaptogens, if we need to throw that term out there, all these mushrooms that are in most of the mushroom-based coffees are adaptogens, which means it helps people adapt to the adverse effects of stress, if you will, or cortisol balancing, kind of at its core. So those are in there to help balance or mitigate the stress response. I do find that Ryze tends to test well. And for
yeah,
those super sensitive people, that like the O blood type female that I was just mentioning, they seem to be able to manage or be okay on Ryze. So I typically would recommend that I'll test it. It's not 100%,
yeah.
but it is a potential viable option.
So great point. And I, full disclosure, I actually put mushrooms in my coffee, right? Even though I'm not doing it for the medicinal value, I do think that there is some value at those levels. And I'm really happy to hear that your muscle testing, Rise specifically, right, as one that
Mhm.
is not definitely doing, they're not testing poorly for it. They're not saying don't do this. But
Right.
I would just, and maybe there's a placebo involved in that too at those small amounts for people, which I think has value as well.
hmm hmm
But I did want us to talk about a little bit more about mushrooms in general, and just before we move on to coffee, because this is something I was telling you about before the call that I think people do need to know more about the value of mushrooms. I love that
hmm
the Rise Coffee is bringing more attention to the value of mushrooms,
For
and
sure.
in so many ways, we're way behind in recognizing the value of it.
hmm
This is something I teach about when I talk about mushrooms. Is the National Cancer Institute has talked about this, that for hundreds of years, medicinal mushrooms, mainly in Asian countries, used for treatment of infections. They've also been used for treatment of pulmonary diseases and cancer. And this is the point I want to carry. I hope that is a memorable moment for everybody listening, that they have been approved as adjuncts to standard cancer treatments in Japan and China for more than 30 years. And they do have an extensive clinical history of safe use as single agents or combined with radiation therapy or chemotherapy. Now, thank you for letting me do that little public service announcement, Dr. V, because when we get people who come to us with questions about cancer, there are people who do want to do everything the natural way. There are people who want to do radiation and chemo and the natural things. And I think everybody needs to know that the National Cancer Institute has recognized these as either single agents or combined with those, right? So if you're
hmm
looking to learn more about what you can do to protect your body for many reasons, they talk about reishi, they talk about turkey tail, shiitake, and maitake being great options.
Right. And so, I mean, you bring it all right there because methylation is the heart of cancer, right? Methylation and P450 are the two key pathways that we need to consider in carcinogenic situations. And so these adaptogenic mushrooms, herbs ultimately are facilitating that pathway to allow us to function better, right? And upregulate the pathway that stimulates the tumor suppressor gene. So, I mean, we want anything we can do to facilitate that during, to prevent and reverse, ideally, cancer is a beautiful thing.
Definitely, I would absolutely agree. But I would be cautious to say that there's enough in the mushroom coffees to give you that protective benefit. That's the one thing
Right.
that I
Yeah.
do want to
Yeah.
make a very clear statement, even though that there may be some benefits, some mild benefits for sure. I don't know if it's strong enough to go to that level. right?
Right, right. You mean
Um,
Ryze isn't going to cure cancer?
I don't know. I don't know. Depends.
Right.
Well, I want to point out that there's a company that we've used called MediHerb for a very long time, and MediHerb
Mhm.
has been using these mushrooms for a long time. And if you look at their Ganoderma and Shiitake, right, which were two that they were just talking about, they're talking about a 66-to-1 extract and a 4-to-1 extract on Shiitake. Now, of course, they can't make a ton of claims on here, but if you're going to do this, you do want to get it at a level that is going to give you real significant amounts of the polysaccharides and the triterpenes and everything else that are supposed to be in there. So there are sources out there, right? They're going to be
Right.
that.
And those herbs in my preparation for this, those also actually came up as biome balancers as well, good for the
Mm-hmm.
microbiome. So
Yep.
more added value, and I believe those are some of what's in Epimune as well,
I
right?
was just going to say this is my immune month, so I am taking Epimune Complex this month, which is turkey tail and maitake. So that between those two products, you get a really good spectrum of the different mushrooms and lots that you can do there
I
for
was going to
sure.
say let's compare the dose, but it's proprietary blend on the rise, so we
Yeah,
really
it
don't
is.
know.
Yikes. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
So there you
Yeah.
go, right? Exactly. So that's why I do like the
Yes,
MediHerb that they give us that detail on all of that.
for sure. And the active components in there, huh?
Yes. Yes.
Good stuff.
And we've talked a lot about lion's mane. I think we've gone through tons of research on lion's mane and all the benefits
Right.
for that for brain function. So I don't know if we need to go into that anymore. So are you
Hmm,
ready to take
hmm.
on coffee? Are you ready to transition away from the mushrooms, or do we have
Here we
anything else
go.
we got to say about?
Mushrooms are good.
So all that you said that about, potentially being dangerous, and yet, and I agree with you on everything you said. You've got Harvard Medical School publishing articles saying that drinking coffee might lengthen life, and they'll go down to say that they had 170,000 people, average age of 56 in the UK, and if they drank 1.5 to 3.5 cups of coffee each day, even with a teaspoon of added sugar per cup. Now, that part makes me kind of sick to think about. But they
Yeah,
said they
yeah.
were 30% less likely to die during the study period than those who didn't drink coffee. And it didn't appear to matter much if the coffee contained caffeine or not, but the benefit tapered off for those drinking more than 4.5 cups per day. So interesting things here. Doesn't have to be caffeinated, even with sugar, and they're saying that they're getting the benefit. How on earth is that possible, right?
Right, and you went down to the bottom line trying to see who was sponsoring it, as we rightfully should. You didn't see Mr. Starbuck called out in there, so
Unfortunately, it wasn't. It was a British government that was sponsoring the
Mm,
study, right?
right,
So,
interesting.
but it could be a coffee lover who's pushing their
It is
agenda.
definitely a coffee lover.
Let me throw
Yeah.
just a little more research at you before you dissect it all, Dr. B. This was a study that showed that daily coffee drinking and mental health outcomes. This is April of 2026. This just came out. So they're saying a moderate coffee intake, 2 to 3 cups a day, linked with lowest mental disorder risks. Now, we just talked about how if that does inhibit methylation, that can actually help keep the levels of neurotransmitters balanced a little bit.
Hmm,
Right?
hmm, hmm, hmm.
J-shaped association between coffee consumption and mental health outcomes. Stronger protective effect in men than in women. Now, this is something you mentioned earlier with women, especially pregnant women in coffee.
Hmm, hmm.
And
Right.
no effect modification by caffeine metabolism genotypes. Interesting, huge study that just came out in April of 2026. So
Hmm, hmm.
just kind of wild, right? Because we're not even in April of 2026 yet, which is really actually blowing my mind.
Good point. Wow,
It
how do they
does
do
say
that,
that,
huh?
doesn't it? Yeah, it does. So we've been to the future, my friends. I'm going
We've
to put
seen the
that study
future.
in the links below so you can all see that it clearly says April 15th, 2026.
Wow. Yeah, we are current.
Right.
So cool. Did you want to talk about some of the potential toxins in coffee? Yeah, that came up with some of those studies that we were looking at.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a point that I think comes up a lot, and I do want to address this. There are two very powerful studies that I'm highlighting here: comprehensive analysis of mycotoxins in green coffee supplements, and green coffee in general. And then the other one that was talking about the determination of the mycotoxigenic fungi in coffee. So this is a
Hmm.
real concern. There's definitely a significant exposure to specific fungi and mycotoxins in coffee. So that is when we talk about coffee as the umbrella, it's hard to say, is it the coffee that's harmful for people, or is it the mycotoxins that's harmful
Hmm.
for people?
Hmm. Hmm.
And we know that that can be a big piece. Now, there are
And
companies out there that have third-party tested mycotoxin-free
right.
products, and that's clearly what I'm drinking today, right? I wouldn't do any other.
Let's just make that perfectly clear.
Right.
And so that is a preparation. That's a quality issue
Yes.
ultimately, right? So, like I used to do a bike ride I do annually. They used to support getting these bikes to the coffee growers in Colombia because they could put the beans on a bike and get them to the manufacturers 3 days faster. And so those beans would then be worth 4 times as much because it didn't create the opportunity for these mycotoxins to grow in the wait for the preparation process. So we've got that. We've got the brewing process, the
Yep.
heat, and cold brew is another way potentially to, protect the value, the quality of the coffee,
Yep.
so to speak. So
Yep.
there's some issues where quality does make a difference in this case. Well,
Yes.
in all cases, really, but
Well, in a lot
in
of
some
cases, yeah, according to the study, the presence of the aflatoxins were in 70% of the green coffee samples. So
wow.
that's a
Hmm.
huge percentage. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember because the other piece that I always talk about when it comes to coffee is it may be even more important the water that you're brewing the coffee with, because there's so many
Hmm.
chemicals in municipal water supplies. And when I learned that Starbucks has a standardized way of brewing or filtering water, right, that they use because they
Hmm.
want it to all
Hmm.
taste the same. But remember,
Hmm.
I mentioned that to Jack Dubois, and he goes, "Yeah, but that doesn't say anything about all the mycotoxins that's in their coffee, right? So I'm still not going to drink their coffee." I was like,
Right, right.
good point, Jack.
And the
Thanks for bringing
sugar
that up.
that they're adding, the massive amounts of sugar that they add.
Right. Oh yeah, let's not even talk about that. So yeah,
Yeah,
so can we put that under the coffee umbrella? Is it all the sugar and the nonsense
sure
that
is
gets put in
definitely
there?
going to make it worse and adding dairy. So that's another subject we need to talk about is the fats. Um,
Yes.
let's see, proteins, let's see, the mycotoxins. And I just lost my train of thought because I had that, woo, we got to talk about this. Oh, the cleaner coffees. So yes, we want the mycotoxin free coffees. Quality definitely does. You have some brands that you like. The very popular. I guess I can throw it out. Bulletproof. Those coffees do often test better or different.
Yep.
So I'm willing as a non-coffee guy. I do. I have organic decaf. I have several different versions of Bulletproof. I have Ryze. I have all these coffees on my wall because it's a hot subject for people. People, no, don't get So I try to extend grace and find a coffee that will work for that patient, and directly test it against the methylation pathway, because that's critical. So one of the hacks though is to add good oil, right, to the
Yes.
coffee.
Yes.
And I originally got exposed to that through, the bulletproof movement and so on. And I do definitely see value there adding an oil that works. I'm not a fan of coconut, unfortunately, because it does tend to put stress on the kidneys. Had several patients that were peeing blood
When they overdo the coconut thing, right? Some
when they
people.
overdo the coconut. Yeah, yeah. So, and it was typically, I mean, this one guy, couple months straight, he was peeing chunks. I mean, it was gnarly stuff that he was eliminating, but he was doing, half and half. He was doing half coconut oil, half coffee. You know, 1 to 2, 3 cups a day. Once we finally realized that it was the coconut, cut him. The blood stopped within 24 hours.
Wow.
So then, more studies like, or experiences like that with patients. Another gal, 2 days later, but I just wear it as lotion, and so she was peeing blood too,
Oh wow.
from wearing coconut oil as a skin lotion. So all that to say, coconut's not the ideal. I do love the saturated fat sort of mentality. That's great for the brain, great for cellular health and that sort of stuff. A blood types, I'm typically recommending coconut or not, not coconut. Avocado. Avocado
Oh,
works well
avocado.
for the
Okay.
A's. It's really beneficial. For a lot of us, ghee would be the other good, viable
Yep.
option.
Mm.
You can potentially walnut oil or some of those avocado, I'm sorry, macadamia oil. So there's some options like that to get a little creative because that does seem to be a bit of a brain hack, if you will, to stimulate. You get the CGEs or whatever we were talking about, the benefits there. The oil does seem to be alkalizing and help from a mental health sort of perspective. So
Mm.
there's a little pitch.
Yeah, yeah. No, I would agree. If you're going to do it, that's going to be the best way to do it, is to add that in for sure. But and also, I want to reiterate, to me, you got to be mindful of the water that you're using to brew the coffee. We kind of skipped
For
over,
sure.
and that always kind of struck me when we would be at these seminars and there'd be this coffee that's out there everybody's drinking. But while we're in the seminar, they're teaching us of the dangers of the chlorine in the municipal water. So we're served chlorine while being told how bad it is, because
Or,
the chlorine alone will make vitamin B's that you're taking worthless, right, to some degree, right? Really diminish them. So the
and then
quality is water.
fluoride.
What's that?
And then fluoride, carry.
And yeah, exactly. So I think for me, like when I'm traveling, that's a tough. I avoid coffee as much as I possibly can because I don't know about, number one, the quality of the water, don't know about the quality of the beans, right? So even as a coffee fan, it has to be in the right conditions for me to feel comfortable with that, for sure.
Yeah, safe, right, right.
Right.
Green tea, if somebody realizes maybe the coffee is not working so well, I typically will recommend green tea so they can stay married as they go through the withdrawal symptoms. So the theanine amino acid in green tea helps offset some of the adverse effects of the caffeine. So that'll mitigate potentially some of the headaches. Typically, the threshold I see is you get up over three cups a day. That person is going to be a lot more likely to have the withdrawal symptoms, the headaches, and malaise and all that. Typically, if you are going off coffee, the first 3 days are going to be the roughest. About day three, people start realizing that, hey, my energy is a little bit more stable, through the day because on coffee you got that, ebbs and flows of the stimulated energy. So once they get over that, they'll start sleeping better about day three. So that they're going to wake up more refreshed and their energy is going to be more stable through the day. Coffee drinkers tend to have 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Energy lulls, which is great for Mr. Starbucks, who's then reach for a second cup or a third cup to
Yeah.
stimulate that. So there's some of the pitch if you're realizing that maybe you have some consequences with coffee, or at least choose better coffee. Consider adding oils. I do test patients to determine, hey, if you add 2-3 tablespoons of ghee, then the coffee is going to work for you, or hey, this is really bad for you, we've got cancer issues, then consider green tea as part of your withdrawal protocol, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I would also say that if you're using caffeine specifically, right? If it's coffee for the caffeine, one of the things that I always want to point out to people to learn from it, if you're going to take an advantage from needing coffee, is that
Nice plug. Thank
thank
you.
you. Is that caffeine will also block adenosine receptors in the brain. And that's relevant because the more that adenosine is broken away from the phosphorus molecules, right, for that ATP, the more you get a buildup of adenosine in the brain, which builds up sleep pressure. And one of the reasons that coffee works is it helps block that adenosine receptor so you don't get that sleep pressure from it. But what I found clinically is that's a huge sign that people need more phosphorus to make more ATP, because the
Okay.
adenosine locked into 3 phosphorus molecules is going to give you more energy versus building up sleep pressure in your brain. And so I've many times told people, hey, instead of reaching for that second cup of coffee, try putting some phos food in some water and drink that down and see if you feel the difference in your energy, because that's what your body's actually reaching for instead of trying to block it. And I've seen that to be tremendously helpful for a lot of people, which just basically revealed a severe, phosphorus deficiency in that person, which is a huge need in the body.
Right. That's a great point. I'm just thinking out loud, and I think there was at one point it was kind of vogue to add creatine, wasn't it?
Mm,
As you're
yep,
talking about phosphorus and
yep,
ATP,
yep.
creatine is a great energy cycle system for the
Yes.
brain. So maybe we should. I'm going to be testing that again.
I
That's
would advocate. I mean, there's a lot of really overwhelmingly encouraging data about people adding creatine, especially in older populations for the brain. Creatine
Mhm,
monohydrate, making sure that it's one that's in, the right form. There's a lot of different
mhm.
forms out there. By the way, gummies, just so you know, if you're trying to do creatine for the gummies, when they're tested, they've actually already turned into creatinine. So you don't actually get the value. Just because
Oh
they
no.
put it into the product as an ingredient, once it's converted into a gummy form, it loses the actual freaking value of creatine because it's creatinine. So beware, everybody out
Oops.
there, that there are
Okay.
bad ways that you can be fooled again from
Mhm,
marketing that it's there.
mhm.
So
Good point.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's a huge sidestep we just took there, but yeah,
That's how we roll.
that's right. That's right.
That's how we brew.
Hey, you mentioned it's how we brew. That's how I brew. The You mentioned okay, caffeine withdrawals, right? So you
Uh-huh,
talked
uh-huh.
about that, and we had talked about it before the call, and I think it's worth sharing.
Mhm,
Joseph Antel, another individual that we talk about a lot. He's a very smart guy, and he talked about a book that you and I haven't read yet called Caffeine Blues.
mhm.
Wake up to the hidden, what is it called? Dangers of America's number one drug. So this is a book
Mhm,
that I'm definitely going to grab and I'm going to read through and see what we can learn about it. But so he talks about using that book to help you with your caffeine addiction.
mhm,
But he also
mhm,
talks about a protocol to help you with your withdrawals. And he starts out with adrenal complex. Okay. And you and I were talking about that. Like, why would that be helpful? And obviously, because caffeine is a stimulant to the adrenals. So
mhm,
would that
mhm.
be something that you would be testing for somebody to help them to reduce their caffeine intake to overcome that step?
100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm,
Because the herbs in there are really helpful. Number two, he talks about Drenamine, right? So, which is also a whole food adrenal support piece. So, as we know that Americans are pushing their adrenals, one of the reasons
mhm.
why I do give myself a caffeine curfew is because I know that my adrenals are, you've helped me understand, they're on the edge.
I like that caffeine curfew line too. That's a good one.
Yeah, I do. I do. It's noon. Noon is my
Right.
caffeine
Okay.
curfew for a lot of reasons
Uh,
because it takes time to process it out, right?
right, right.
But
Before you move on to Drenamine, don't forget that it's got the B2, the calming portion of the B vitamins in there, right?
right.
Vasorelaxing helps to facilitate those key pathways in the liver. B2 riboflavin is also deficient when with yeast overgrowth. So it
Ooh.
sets up, like restless leg syndrome, that sort of stuff. So more benefit to somebody potentially withdrawing, especially if they've been putting sugar in their coffee. Mhm.
Oh, or they're getting mycotoxins from their
Or
coffee.
they're getting mycotoxin. Yeah, great point. There you
Right.
go.
Yeah. So maybe Drenamine should be just like if you're a
Top.
coffee drinker, it should kind of be part of your lifestyle then to go with it to balance it
So
out.
we're gonna make coffee with Drenamine in
Yeah.
it. Stay
We're
tuned
gonna make
for
little biscuits out of Drenamine is what it
Truth or
is.
Trend coffee coming soon.
Unfortunately, you won't be drinking any of it. That's no fun.
I won't be on the box, the label. You'll be on the front, I'll be on the back.
And we'll both be just happy as ever. As
That's
long as
right.
we do. So yeah, shout out to Joseph Antel. He's another person who's against caffeine and coffee in general. But before we say that coffee equals caffeine, it's a portion of it, and that's why I wanted to talk about the chlorogenic. What is it? Chlorogenic acid.
He had two other supplements in there that we probably wanted honorable mention, right?
Oh yeah,
Just
let's
grab
give an honorable mention to them. Yeah, sure, why not?
rhodiola and ginseng, right? And there was
Rhodiola and ginseng, he said to keep in your
trend.
pocket for when your energy levels start to dip. And rhodiola, I love rhodiola for a lot of reasons, but I also think of it as something that's a little it's releasing your energy. It's not something that I think I would want to rely on all the time. Kind of like coffee, people are using it to get energy. Rhodiola will there there's I guess it's not a free lunch in biology with rhodiola either. But the Vikings discovered taking rhodiola before going into battle gave them better mental clarity, better resilience, better energy.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so part of the idea is that hormesis idea, right? We get some of the strength of that plant that can survive above the Arctic Circle with all that radiation hitting it, gets transferred to the human when they take it. That's kind of some of the theory behind that. And so, yeah, I do have a lot of people that I will suggest on the days you're going into battle, is what I'll say. Keep that rhodiola in your pocket, right?
Which is every day, isn't it?
Okay, so let's be clear. Yes. I'm trying to be in a Pollyanna world here, Dr. P.
And then it was min checks was the other one, right?
Min checks, yes. Also, yeah, to help
which we
all
talked about in last week. Actually the podcast is posting today, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. About the hyaluronidase in there and the minerals in there. One of my top.
Great for the brain.
Yes. So in order of importance, yeah, that's what Joseph said. He goes adrenal complex, number 1, Drenamin, number 2, Minchex, number 3, and rhodiola in your pocket, number 4, were his suggestions. Which are great.
Muscle testers. Yeah. Muscle testers. Now you have a list to go through and test which one's going to work best for that patient.
Right. I mean, and for coffee withdrawal, I would also think about phosphate though, right? For people, because it may be what they're reliant upon is the blocking of the adenosine receptors. So that's another thing to consider for those of you who are trying to wean yourself off of coffee or reduce it or get it down to safe levels, like me, right? Relatively safe. Okay.
Right. You mentioned the coffee book. Another one of my current favorites that I'm listening to for the second time is The Upside of Stress. And kind of the whole concept there is cortisol it's there for a reason. There's benefit to it. It tells us that this is a priority. And I like the point she kind of makes, is it a challenge? Do you see the cortisol as a challenge response or a threat response? And that's kind of the difference. And I'm just bringing that up because cortisol, I mean, if a person's doing a lot of coffee, they're in that kind of that feeling like they like that. Addicted to, if you will, that fight or flight response, which I too am a high energy guy. I got big expectations of myself and my daily production, if you will. So look at that stress response as a challenge response, not so much as a threat of a doom and gloom, right? And so putting those butterflies in order, if you will. So another one, if coffee, if you're kind of in that fight or flight, swimming in a sea of cortisol, like I tend to live, that's another way, another way to help kind of stabilize and balance through that.
Right. Whereas coffee wouldn't be a great idea for somebody who's already swimming in a sea of cortisol.
Right.
Because it will, and you're going to slow down the breakdown of it. You're going to stimulate more of it potentially. Yeah. Okay. I see why you don't drink coffee now, Dr. V. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, even race day, I use electrolytes with some caffeine, but I have to be crazy careful because I'll get leaky gut. I'll start reacting to whatever I'm using.
Wow.
I'll feel like on edge and like overexcited. I'm kind of the opposite, and I guess that's part of why it never smelled good to me. I never even, I think I took a sip or two of when I was in my youth, a coffee alcoholic kind of beverage. I thought it was just gross, and that was as far as I've ever even really gotten on the coffee scene. So,
oh man, good for you. See, there are reasons that you are who you are today.
Well, and you're making the best of your gene pool, right?
Absolutely.
Well for you. So
I did want to point out though that there is something in coffee beyond caffeine that I think is worth noting, right? And it's something that we can get from other things too. But this is one of where some of the benefits might be coming from, because we looked at that study saying that so many people are living longer because of it. And this may be one of the pieces to that. And it's the chlorogenic acid. And this article is even talking about improving PTSD-like symptoms and associated mechanisms. So there's a lot to be said about the chlorogenic acid as something that we potentially can be getting a lot of benefit from coffee. And so that is something to think about. It's actually talking about how, it can improve the survival rate of dopaminergic neurons, inhibit the apoptosis of pyramidal cells in the CA1 region of the hippocampus. So there is a lot of evidence that there could be a lot of protection from this as well, right?
I wonder if there's man, you just got my brain going.
All right. Even without caffeine, I got your brain going. There you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of like the hyaluronidase that we talked about last week. That almost sounds like something that we maybe should be looking out for post-concussion.
Right,
You know,
potentially, right, CGA. And so
right.
if you can't get it from coffee, you can get some from teas, but it's just not the same, right? It's not the same level. So I would look at finding, I think you could do a search, and I'm trying to find, I had written down a list of things. Coffee is the primary source, but we can also get it from apples, pears, eggplant, blueberries, sunflower seeds. But none of these come close to the concentration in coffee, unfortunately. But
And we talked about at our recent conference, blueberries, right? What a great brain food they were.
yeah,
So
and now we
here's
know
another reason. Yeah.
chlorogenic acid, yeah, is one of those. So
Yeah.
yeah, so mix in the blueberries, right? Definitely.
Mhm.
In fact, a total sidebar that think of blueberries. I take Bacopa complex from time to time because Bacopa is helpful for the hippocampus as well, and there's some rosemary in there. But I've learned to always take it with my blueberries, so that's just one of those nature pairings that I've dug into. So just
Nice.
little side pearl for those of you out there. Blueberries
And there's
are a daily for me. Yeah.
yeah. What did you just talk about in the Vitanox?
No, the
Ro
Bacopa complex.
rosemary.
Rosemary. Yep.
Lee Carroll calls rosemary the best anti-aging herb.
Really,
Interesting.
rosemary.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I put it in my smoothies. What do you think?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so
Nice.
and again, another pitch for like Vitanox and a lot of the great products we have available.
Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of ways to be able to do this, but again, it is finding that sweet spot. And so
Hmm.
I think with coffee, why it's so confusing because there is so much research out there saying it's great for people, it's killing people, right?
Hmm.
We want to make sure that those people who are probably most susceptible to the dangers of it are the ones who are for you to share this podcast with, right? Because you shared with me some very powerful research about epigenetic effects of coffee and
Hmm.
how that can impact gene expression, alteration of DNA methylation. So not great for pregnant women, right? That's something that
Hmm.
definitely stay away from in
Right,
pregnancy.
right.
This may be the article my brother wrote or read because before they had their first child, I don't know how he convinced his wife of this. She didn't drink coffee for a whole year before they had a child together.
Nice.
I know, right? Because there is some challenges to that for sure, and I'm really happy you shared that. But you also said the O type, right? The blood type of O are probably going to be people who are going to have greater challenges with coffee, or probably best to avoid it or find other ways to get the benefits.
Yep,
And
yep.
hypomethylators, right? That's probably
Hmm.
people that should be very cautious with coffee. Is there anybody I
Yeah.
missed in that group of people?
No, I mean, along the pregnancy line, I mean, I have virtually just about well, at this point, I've got a bunch of pregnant gals, but they're all on adrenal glandular, so just kind of the opposite side of the whole
Yeah,
coffee spectrum. So
yeah,
doctors, I mean, that is adrenal glandulars are the way to help minimize the nausea. It helps from an epigenetic, facilitating methylation so that the baby gets the good genes, reduces, I talked about nausea, but then the baby that's born to adrenally deficient mom, that baby's going to be the more stressed mom's adrenals are during pregnancy, the earlier in childhood the child will get asthma, allergies, or eczema.
mm,
So, I mean, the coffee situation here is going to exaggerate all of that.
yeah.
The antidote typically is going to be an adrenal glandular. Just another sidebar, Pearl. I know we're trying to wrap up and review what we've covered, but I'm throwing more out there.
Not at all. I mean, I'm of the mind that we need more and more adrenal support, because we're just not allowing the time for our adrenals to recover. It's just our society is not geared towards that. That's why I'm going to Italy for my birthday to give my adrenals a vacation. Okay.
It's a good
They
way to
know how
test
to
it.
take their time and they drink some coffee over
I
there.
was gonna say they got glyphosate free coffee, huh? Coffee, huh?
Yeah. Which I'll be putting my butter in my coffee over there
There you
when I
go.
have that.
Olive oil.
Yes, or olive oil. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, there is a line, right? Where there's some people that it's a really bad idea, but I think if you're going to be drinking coffee, probably not a bad idea to just proactively put Drenamine into your daily if you're a coffee drinker, just to help
Mhm.
nourish your adrenals, keep them from being beat up too much, not have to
Put
get
the good oils in there.
that.
Put the good
That's right.
oils in there, right?
The good
Make
oils,
sure you get good, clean coffee. Mhm.
Right, right. I actually put electrolytes in my coffee too. There's a company called Salt Tea that Kelly in the office here found, and it's basically, a little bit of sodium, but magnesium, potassium, and there's a cacao in there with no sugar. So I just put a dash or two in there to give myself some electrolytes in my coffee as well. The
Mm-hmm.
benefit of the cacao, right? So
Nice.
there's a lot of things that I throw into this coffee to make it more
Yeah.
than just coffee. And
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the whole diuretic thing.
oh yeah, well let's hit that real quick. Real quick. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got me thinking of that with the electrolytes, right? There's potentially a way to offset some of the adverse diuretic effects.
And
If,
also some of the damaging
Mhm.
effects on the adrenal glands, right? Because the adrenals need potassium, right? It's a big piece of it.
Mhm. Well
So
done.
thank you. Thank you.
I forgive you for drinking coffee again.
Yeah. Awesome.
Still friends.
Yeah. Well, it's a good reminder, though, that I do need to keep it to those 2, maybe 3 cups a day. But even though I'm using good water and good beans and I'm putting other things in there, I actually sometimes put the adrenal, that tonic in there, the herbal adrenal tonic in my
Yeah.
coffee. Just ways to kind of, blend it in, make sure I'm getting more value from it. There's a lot of things. Sometimes I sprinkle saffron on top of my coffee, but
Nice.
that's a whole other.
All kinds of hacks.
That's right. But to be fair, as you were saying, people who might be hypermethylators, right? They may actually get some benefit from coffee, or like you said, type A, the blood type A. So yeah, keep in mind that for some people it may be more of a medicine, and for other people it's more of a poison. That's just the interesting thing about it. And
Indeed.
and good to know that the Ryze is still testing okay for people, so it's not bad. Oh, one last thing I did want to share. Again, Kelly from the office found a different company that she brings into the office here, and she's just said it's more affordable to give people options. So maybe you want to check this one out, Dr. V. Instead of the Ryze, it's called Yege, Yege. We're not sponsored by them at all, but we always want to give people their options to see what they're getting. And so it's very similar, and they even have a Yege versus Ryze tab up here. So that what they both offer and what they don't. So this is just interesting. So I think it was mostly price and value that I want to make.
Have you had a chance to test that? Have you had a chance to muscle test that?
I haven't muscle tested it, no, but this is what we have. What I put in my coffee actually is the Yege, because that's what she provides here for the office for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be curious to test it. I mean, there's another supposedly healthy, clean coffee that I've not seen to test good on anybody.
Oh,
I even
really?
bought some thinking maybe I was going to keep it in the office. And it was that Life Work or something like that coffee that unfortunately didn't test well.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Well, I use Purity coffee, and I have tested a lot of people for that, and some people don't test for it, quite honestly, but it could be the caffeine or other pieces that are in it. But for the most part, I feel confident with that one. I feel good about it. That's all we served at the seminar was Purity coffee brewed with crazy water, right? To make sure that it was
Nice.
clean. Yeah, and we even had the electrolytes there for people too, if they want them. So
Nice.
okay, any last thoughts before we let them go after their second cup of coffee?
Yeah, I guess the answer is test and pay attention to how you're feeling, really, right? Adrenal symptoms, weakness in the knee, weakness at L5, pain at L5, right? Withdrawal symptoms, you get withdrawals when you do it. We've talked about a lot of great hacks here, to see if maybe there's a way to hack your coffee so you can keep the the benefits, the social aspects of it going. Yeah. Be educated, be inspired and educated.
There it is. And keep it coming. Keep the questions coming. And again, as always, please share this episode with somebody you think who might drink too much coffee or who has been bamboozled into thinking that drinking Ryze coffee is going to cure them of all diseases. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Have a good one.